the Magneto Speed V3 Chronograph, right now on Pirate Firearms and Reloading.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to kick 2024 off with a video that I've been meaning to do for quite some time now, and that is the Magneto Speed V3 Chronograph. So we all know how important it is getting an accurate muzzle velocity, and the traditional chronographs that have been used in the past and are still available to this day, that use light sensors, and you have to put reflectors and shadows and things all over it to get it to work properly, and then you've got to be the right distance, and then you've got to not shoot the device. I think Magneto Speed really changed the game on chronographs with this. So there is obviously lab radar. Lab radar's cool. I've played around with one that a buddy had. You get false shots, you get shots picked up from other people, you get shots not picked up because you have a suppressed firearm. The Magneto Speed does away with all of that. So let's crack it open and I'll show you what's going on. Obviously comes with this really nice plastic case. It's not a terribly thick case, it's not like a Pelican or anything crazy, but it's more than sufficient to protect it. At the end of the day, this is precision equipment, you're going to be looking after it anyway. There's a whole lot of bits and pieces that come within the kit. So the one thing that I really do like about the base unit, if you like, is that it is dual power source. So you can run two CR123A batteries, or you can run a 9-volt battery like I am. This is the original 9-volt battery I started using way back when. I just take it out every time so it's not sitting in there. Put it in a little plastic bag, put it in the kit, so there's no corrosion or anything that goes on. We all know what alkali batteries are like, but it uses very little power. I don't typically use the backlight on this guy, so I'm not really drawing a whole lot of power. I turn it on, I fire my shot string that I want to record, and then I basically put it away again. So dual battery, really nice. There is a little card here in the top. You'll all be familiar with a micro SD card. So this little card in here, I've just got a 2 gig in there. So it writes a CSV file, which you can open in most spreadsheet applications. CSV is comma separated values. So you can either view it here on the screen on the Magneto Speed, or you can actually plug it into a computer and pull it off that way. Now the one really cool thing I do like, and I've thought about this because we all break cables, right? They don't use any special proprietary cables, plugs, fancy things. They just use a standard 3.5mm headphone jack. And they give you 2 in the kit. So they have like a longer fixed one, and then they have this really neat little retractable one. Generally speaking, I find this is more than enough. When you've got the chronograph mounted up to your muzzle, you can plug it in 2 places. I'll show you in a second, and that's more than enough for the actual base unit itself to be comfortably sitting on the ground and not, dangling off in free air. And the cool thing about these little retractable ones is you only just pull out as much cable as you need. So here is the main part of the operation. This is referred to as the bayonet for obvious reasons. And if you haven't seen a Magneto Speed before, the whole point of it is it actually clamps itself to the barrel of the rifle. So I'll just slip this over here for a second. All right. The idea being you clamp it to the barrel of the rifle here, and as the bullet passes over this sensor array that's built into the end of the bayonet, it measures the speed of the bullet. So there's a couple of main parts to the bayonet assembly. You've got this webbing strap here, you've got a buckle, and then you've got a thumb wheel tensioner knob to really clamp down and ensure it doesn't move on the barrel of the rifle. What you get is a series of different height spacers, and the idea is no two barrel profiles will ever quite be the same. So you mix and match spaces to get the correct clearance so the bullet is passing over the bayonet and the sensor array at the correct height. Now, this all sounds very complicated. It's actually not too bad. So I have already pre-installed the thick spacer and another smaller spacer, and they do give you a little baggie of screws and a little Allen wrench, so you can set this up. If you're doing a load development on a certain rifle and you know you're going to be using it multiple times in the same rifle, this is a far better way of doing it. You can just lock the spacers together. They do clip together. They do have indexing points here underneath. Now, these red ones are an extra item, so these are actually tapered spacers. So the black spacers here, like this little guy, that's just a plain old flat spacer, nothing fancy about it. When you get into sporter profile barrels, quite often you see quite a big taper going on. And this is where these come in. So this is an add-on. You get 1/2 degree and a 1 degree. Obviously, if you combine them together, 1.5 degrees. So they've all got the screw slots in them if you're securing them up in a more functional way. With the tapered ones, if I get this to focus, there is actually a little arrow on them as well as how many degrees they are tapering, which is really neat. So we've inserted the correct spacers. There is also 2 rubberized spacers, which allow you to grip the barrel. So you've got a thick one and a thin one. Today I'm going to use the thin one. And so now you just push that guy on top, and now we're ready to actually mount it up to the barrel. The first time you mount this, it's going to be a bit of a test fit. Slide it over. Now I'm going to do this upside down for convenience. You can actually run the bayonet off to the side, you can run it up, you can run it down. It does not actually matter. I know when I first got this, I was very paranoid about making sure it was vertical. It's not actually such a problem. So what you do now, and this is where you need about 3 extra hands, and this is the point where I'm thankful my rifle is clamped in the vise at the moment. You can see, obviously out in the field, this will be a little bit difficult to set up. So I've just come as tight as humanly possible on the strap, and I'm just gonna now spin the thumb wheel a little bit. All right, and you can wrap that around, and there's another slot. Hang on, let me spin this back for you so you can all see it. There's another slot on here, so you can keep the little piece of extra webbing out of the way. Now you have the bayonet mounted to your firearm. This drop here is specifically designed for muzzle brakes like this particular rifle. So it gives you the clearance. It keeps all the blast away from the sensors and stops any interference. Now, in the case, they give you this, 1/4 inch square hollow section. And the idea behind that is you then simply place that on top to make sure you have sufficient clearance. So the top of this guide rail will be at the underside of your barrel. So the concept now is, so as you can see, I have a cleaning rod passing through from the chamber end, and you can see that it is just sitting on top of this 1/4 inch spacer. So this is perfectly aligned, and I know I'm not going to have any issues of a bullet striking the bayonet. Now, that has definitely happened for people. You can thankfully order another bayonet as a spare part from Magneto Speed if you happen to have a little accident. But if you take your time and you follow the procedure, there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. So the other way you can do it is simply, with a bolt action, obviously, you can remove the bolt, look down the barrel, and make sure you can't see the bayonet or the adjusting rod, or measuring rod, shall we say. Now, coming back to this nice stereo cable adapter, you actually have two slots where you can plug this bayonet in. So you have one here on the rear. That's in the camera. Yes, it is just. Right. You can plug it in there at the rear, or if I spin this guy around again, you'll actually find another plug under the bottom there. So realistically, you have options. That's always nice too. If you manage to damage one of these ports, you've still got one spare. Obviously, the ports are not replaceable. Well, not by the user anyway. You'd have to send that sort of thing back for service. And now, you notice there's only 3 buttons here on the display. Super simple to use. It will not power on until you plug the cable in. And then we get our startup sequence. And it goes straight into its shot recording mode. So what happens is every time you fire a shot, it will add 2, 3, 4, and so on through your shot string. It will be calculating your minimum, maximum, average, and standard deviation all on the fly. So each time you take a shot, all of those numbers are updated. Once you've shot your shot string and you want to save it and start a new shot string, you basically press the center button, you scroll down to Archive Series, press the middle button, and it's going to have a spaz because there's nothing to archive. And that's as simple as that. You can also, say you had a fouling shot or something like that and you wanted to delete a particular shot. I know a lot of people that chronograph do delete their highest and lowest shot sometimes out of the shot string, so you can do that. You can also manually set the sensitivity. So I found this became necessary. I chronographed my muzzleloader. And I actually had to play with the sensitivity a little bit. Now, that was a rather interesting experience, and I'll talk about that one in a second. So you can go through, you can do all sorts of things here in the menu. You can clear the entire shot series, so you made a mistake or something. You can view archived data. Now, unfortunately, I deleted my shots the other day after coming back from the range, so I'll insert some footage of what this looks like. So basically there's a menu / accept button, and there's an up and down arrow. You can check the battery status, of course. You've got operating modes here, so you've got normal mode, shotguns obviously for multiple projectile, and then of course rapid fire. The one thing I don't like is when you go back out of a menu, it does kick you straight back to the start. Right, you can switch between feet per second and meters per second. You can switch between standard deviation and an extreme spread in that initial display screen. Whoops. Yep, and it's kicked me back. You can actually go from the top. You can reset this whole system. So say you're having a little bit of trouble with it, you've played with something you probably shouldn't have, hit the reset button, you're back in business. And of course you can actually set the backlight as well. So if you're shooting at an indoor range or something where it's a little bit darker and you're struggling to read the screen, you can set the backlight. Now, I've just got my workshop lights here going, and you can see there's some reflection from the lights over ahead, but that screen is really quite readable out in bright sunlight too, which is very impressive. If you're just shooting for a shot string and you're going to deal with the data later, it's not a big deal that you're seeing it anyway. It's just nice to see that the shots are being recorded. Now, for any reason, if it doesn't pick up a shot properly, it will spit out a little error, and it'll tell you that it didn't read it. That's when you may want to play with the sensitivity manually. Right, and once you've archived your series and you're done for the day, you simply unplug the cable and put it away for another day. So when you get home and you want to pull that data off and you're not going to plug it into a computer, you're just going to read it straight off the screen. You don't actually have to have it connected to the bayonet. Now, hang on, if I can get this right. So when you do plug it in like that though, you'll get your startup screen, and then it will tell you the bayonet is unplugged, and then it will kick straight back through to the shot menu. So you can use the system with the bayonet unplugged. Now, it does come with a few other little accessories. So there is also a sportive version of this, which is a cheaper version. It doesn't come with a few of these accessories that I've shown you here, but this is a This is both an extra grip pad and a thermal protector for a suppressor. Obviously a suppressor is a larger diameter, and basically this will wrap over the top of your suppressor and you will mount the bayonet directly to the suppressor. So this is providing thermal protection and also grip against the shiny, quite often, surface of the suppressors. So that's the Magneto Speed in a nutshell. It's incredibly accurate. You don't get all those false readings you do get with some other products that are out there. You don't have to worry about setting up, sun filters and shields and elements and, all that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, you can still shoot it just like the old school chronographs. If you're not paying attention, it will happen. Now, on a nice shiny barrel like this, with a muzzle brake on the end, there's no real chance of this thing making its way forward, sliding off the end and having trouble. Now, I did have this, I was chronographing my father's hunting rifle, which is just a bare muzzle, quite a tapered barrel. So I did have these tapered spacers in use. And what I found is after a couple of shots, the chronograph was about ready to drop off the end of the muzzle and I was about to shoot through the webbing strap. So that is something to note. This is a Tikka CTR barrel here, and it's a relatively straight taper here, and obviously it's never going to slide past this timing nut on the muzzle brake. So that's something to note. Like I said earlier, yes, you can set it up at a different angle. Obviously, upside down is going to negate you seeing down the sights or through a scope. But you can kind of set it up where you want. Now, the one thing I'm not particularly thrilled about is the fact that it's mounted to your barrel. Now, that gives you pros of, not picking up other people's shots, and it's a lot easier to make sure you're not going to shoot the thing. But it does, obviously, you hang a weight off any barrel, you're going to alter the harmonics. And on a heavier barrel like this, I haven't noticed it too much. But it can alter your shot groups, it can alter your point of impact. So if you were doing, say, a pre-hunt chronograph and zero session, you would have to do your chronograph, take this back off, confirm your zero. So that's a little bit of a downside. Now, there are companies out there who make special adapters that clamp to Picatinny rail and Arca rail, and they basically consist of like a long tube that actually supports the Magneto Speed, rather than clamping it on the barrel. I did look at one of those, but it was about $400 or $500 worth of gear to add on to an already reasonably expensive piece of equipment. And I decided that that dollar value versus the gain I was going to get wasn't there. And the other thing too is that on certain firearms that I own, I don't have a pick rail or an Arca rail. So that sort of meant that it was only good for some things as well. So that left me with just suck it up and use it the way it was designed to be used. Briefly touched on muzzle loader before. So I did want to chronograph my muzzle loader. Now, as muzzle loader suggests, you've got to put everything in from the front. So when you've got a bayonet sticking out the front like this, pouring your powder in is not too bad. Putting your projectiles in is not too bad. However, using a ramrod and ramming it home can become a little bit awkward with the bayonet, and I was very, very concerned that I was going to damage the bayonet in some way. So that didn't quite work out as nice as I hoped. The other thing to consider too is if you shoot things like lever guns, which have a full-length tubular magazine underneath, you may run into a few issues there if it decides to cant over. Obviously, because you've got effectively two tubes stacked one on top of each other, and then it decides to cant, it's going to come loose. That would be the same with, shotguns and that have tubes all the way to the end of the muzzle or near enough to. So it does have its downsides. It's not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination, but it has served me well. And the only thing is that I just don't use it as much as I probably should because it's a little bit of a rigmarole to set up. What I have been known to do, like with this rifle here, it's a little bit long to do, but set it up here on the workbench before I go out to the range. Put it in a hard case, lay it nice and flat, make sure it's not going to get damaged, and do it that way. I've also, with suppressed rifles, actually mounted everything up here on the workbench, mounted the Magneto speed to the suppressor, and then taken the suppressor off. That works quite well as well. But it's just a little bit of a nightmare. I can imagine if you're on a public range and you had a range officer that was a little bit officious and you're out, potentially in front of your muzzle, playing around with something he may not recognize or she may not recognize as a chronograph, they might try and kick you out. So, it has its pros and its cons. All right, folks, so that's the end of today's video. If you've got any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. Just as a reminder, please don't forget to subscribe. About 3% of my viewers are subscribed. It's free, click the button, it helps me out and allows me to keep creating this content that you're watching. Till next time, happy shooting.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And if you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Catch you next time.